Hello, welcome.
Oh,
I want to
thank you
thank you
very
so
much.
much for joining me. So today we are talking with MJ Mars, who is the author of, I believe your debut novel is The Suffering.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you, I had no idea that that was your first novel, and I just finished it yesterday. I was shocked that that was your first. Like, honestly, I was so impressed with it.
Oh,
I
well,
feel like,
thank you.
yeah, of course. So I guess my very first question is, I know that MJ Mars is your pen name, and would you be able to tell us kind of a history behind how you picked that name and why you use it?
It's not very exciting, I'm afraid. It's just my first and second name is Michelle Jane, and my surname is Marsden. So I just thought the Mars was kind of cool. And then, like, my old English teacher got in touch, and he was like, "Does the MJ stand for Mercury Jupiter?" I was like, "Okay, it does now."
Yes. Yep, that's exactly that's exactly it.
So yeah,
Um,
nothing too exciting about it, I'm afraid. But I just wanted to have that pen name just as a little separation, just so business and pleasure, and the writing is the pleasure. So have something a little different.
oh yeah, no, I love that so much. Like I feel like MJ Mars is such like you want a name that is catchy, and I feel like that does exactly, what you want it to do. So
Oh,
um
thank you.
yeah, your accent is adorable. Can I just
Oh,
say?
it's Lancashire in the UK, so if you don't understand anything I say at any point, just let me know.
Oh no, you are so fine. I honestly, I'm just used to listening to people like me all day that this is kind of like a breath of fresh air.
Oh,
It's very cute. I like it.
thank you.
Um, so I want to talk about the suffering because, like I said, this is your debut novel. So can you talk about kind of how you got into writing? What maybe inspired you to write this?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved writing. So when I was at school, every time there was the class where we had to do the short stories or whatever, and everyone else was moaning, I was the one who was happy and just scribbling away. I think I remember a time when I was at school, and this must have been primary school, so like very, very young, about 8 or something like that. And the teacher had said, like, um, write something down. And I'd been obsessively watching like the Blues Brothers, and I wrote like a whole scene out just because I was so fascinated by how to write people talking and people doing things. And so this teacher must have got it and just been like, "What the heck is this from this kid?" But ever since then, I was just, really, really into just exploring how to write down language and scenarios and just make it so that other people could see them. I thought that was just the best thing in the world. And I was, quite gruesome when I was a little kid. I was into like the London Dungeon and things like that. So if I could combine, the interest in writing with something a little bit gruesome and horrific, then I was very happy.
Yeah, like that's best case scenario. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you were young, did you read like a lot of horror? I'm not sure what was popular, in the UK back then, but like I used to love like the Goosebumps books and like Christopher Pike. Like, did you read things like that or?
Oh yeah, Christopher Pike and R.L. Stein, I think, were
Yes. Yeah.
massive when I was a kid. But I probably kind of read things that were a little bit maybe too old at the time because I just loved it. I loved sort of I really really enjoyed those kind of books. But then I was like, oh, looking in the kids section of the horror, I was just like, oh, I'll just see what's in the adult section, and just sidestep over there without anybody noticing. So I remember I went on holiday and I bought a load of Richard Lehman books for
Oh
the
wow.
plane. And oh, that was it. I was just absolutely hooked. It was splatterpunk for life from then on.
Wow. You started early.
I did, I really did. And it's so funny though, because I was thinking today about how you start early on things like that, and then later on when I'd seen people saying, "Oh, Richard Lehman, splatterpunk kind of extreme," and I was like, "No, he's not. No, he's not." And I was like, "Actually, he is. You only don't think that because you started reading it when you were like 9, and so it just becomes so just normal.
Yeah, like it's all relative, you know what I mean? Like I read a book recently about serial killers and I'm like, it seemed like a pretty tame book to me personally. And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, read this book. It's great. It's, pretty tame. And then like people who aren't into any of that stuff is like, what are you reading? I'm like, oh, that's
definitely.
right. Like this is not like I'm just kind of, I don't say jaded, but like I'm just used to this kind of
Yeah.
thing. You know what I mean?
But I always find it so funny because like there'll be members of my family, like my nana, she'd be watching these shows about people who kind of got murdered in villages and things like that. And she'd be like, oh, it's a nice murder. And I'm just like, Nana, there is no such thing as a nice murder. It's such a strange kind of that there's like an opinion about those kind of books where it's like, oh, it's extreme, it's horrendous. And then I think, well, people are watching every day, these people breaking into people's houses and murdering
Yeah.
people. And I think that's just as bad, but there's some kind of like opinion in the world where, there's such a separate divide between the two. And I just think, I feel a lot safer reading about, a ghost or something than I do
Yeah.
about reading someone breaking into my house. And so
I
I
know.
just find that a
Like
bit strange.
when it's
Sorry.
realistic, like I agree. Like when it's realistic,
Yeah.
like I'm genuinely scared. Like I get, I feel, let me try to speak. Okay. I feel like a spooky feeling. So like The Suffering, for example, is about spirits kind of like attaching themselves to you. Like that I feel is creepy. So like when I was reading it, like I would hear like my neighbors walking around be like, what is that? Like it is a creepy feeling. But generally speaking, like I don't believe in spirits. So like it wasn't
Mhm.
like I'm losing sleep over this, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly. But if it's like a sort of axe maniac, like reading about the true crime, you just think, well, that could happen at any minute and it's awful. So,
No,
yeah.
I mean it doesn't like yes, yeah, I like that's really the one thing that kind of scares me.
Mhm.
Well, one thing I did want to ask you, like generally speaking, what does scare you? Because when you are really into horror, kind of like we are, the general, everyday things aren't quite as scary to us as they are to most people. But is there anything that really does scare you?
Oh, yeah. So alien abduction has always been massively scary for me. And yeah, I don't know. It sort of started, I think there was like an Oprah or something, and it was like people were on just saying, like, oh, I got abducted by this alien and had an implant put in me and stuff. So
No.
if it's on Oprah, then it must be real kind of thing. So it
Yes.
scared
Yeah.
the heck out of me when I was a little kid. And that's always stuck with me, really. And
So
so before The Suffering was picked up, I was just umming and ahhing about doing an alien book. I think because you've got to tap into the things that you're really afraid of. But I'm glad I didn't have to do that because it really does frighten me.
So out of curiosity, so you're from the UK. I know we have, over here, like Area 51 is big in terms of like alien UFO sighting, like things like that. Do you have anything like that over there?
I think we have like UFO sightings and things like that. I think there's quite a few in Yorkshire, which isn't a million miles away from here, unfortunately.
Or fortunately, because you're far away from like all the scary stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still, people are still interested. People are still really intrigued. And I think like I mentioned in my sort of dedication in the book about, Tom DeLonge and sort of like sh- shining the light on the alien things that are out there and that are kind of maybe true and things like that. I enjoy anyone who's sort of like is shining the light for paranormal and strange things and getting those stories out there because I find it so interesting and
Yeah,
inspirational.
that is very cool. So, just very quickly, I live in so you probably have never heard of it, but it's called the Bridgewater Triangle. So there's a documentary about it where, there's a lot of weird paranormal things happening. And I had never heard of this. So I'm scrolling through Netflix or whatever, and I'm like, the Bridgewater Triangle. I'm like, oh, what's that? So I'm looking, I'm like, it's this like triangle that's in like three towns, including my town, about where all this paranormal stuff happens. I'm like, what? Like, how have I
Oh,
lived in here and not known this like this whole time? Like that's so creepy to me.
that's so
But yeah, no, I
cool.
agree. It is kind of a scary, like you don't know like what's in the universe. How would we know?
So you near the Goatman Bridge then? Because isn't the Goatman Bridge in the triangle?
Oh, is
Or
it? I don't know.
yeah.
All I know is like this is creepy. I don't know if I want to know anything about this. I'd rather live in like,
Oh.
you know, just kind of my bubble where few things don't happen, you know. um, wow, we veered way off track on that one.
I
That
know,
was actually
sorry.
no, not at all. Like, I think this is great. Like, this interview series is all about, you know, getting to know you and your personality. So we're doing it a little differently than we've done in past. Where I would rather have a conversation, you know, than kind of a like a question answer kind of thing. So I think this is fantastic. Like, um, but I do want to ask you about the suffering. So, just out of curiosity, so if you had this cast as I got a little distracted because my cat's throwing stuff off the balcony. Sorry. So if this was actually turned into a TV show or a movie, who would be, you know, some of the main characters? Like, would you be able to pick out characters to play?
Do you know, it's funny, I was thinking about this the other day. The only character that really kept coming back into my mind over and over again as a real person was Caleb, you know, the grumpy uncle. And there's a comedian in England, he's called Nick Helm. So I don't know if he's sort of made it over in the US, probably
It's not
not.
familiar to me.
He's in a show called Uncle over here, so a few of you may have seen that. But yeah, he's just got that really kind of like the hangdog look and the gruff kind of thing and the hair and then as I was writing it, it just I could hear his voice when I was like putting it in. So I was just like, yeah, he would play Caleb for sure, and it would be brilliant.
That's awesome. So would you prefer like a movie or a TV show? Like I'm wondering if it would make a good limited series, I feel like.
Well, yeah, I mean, I mean, anything would be amazing, let's face it. But yeah, I like the idea of like a little sort of Netflix series or something like that. And I was talking the other day about the music that had kind of inspired it, and one of the songs I'd sort of described as like I could picture it over like the sort of intro to it
Mhm.
if it was
Yeah.
going to be like a serialized thing. So yeah, I guess probably a sort of six-parter. Over here in Britain, we only have about 5 or 6 parts when they do shows, unfortunately. So yeah, they're over and done with pretty quickly. Whereas I think in the US, they sort of like have quite a few parts, don't they, usually?
Yeah, they tend to. I feel like they go a little overboard over here because
Oh,
that's just kind of how they're like, what how can we milk this as much as possible? Like we want
yeah.
all the money out of it instead of like focusing on quality, which, you know, like there's a balance, you know what I mean? So sometimes it's better just to have like a few like a shorter thing, but then have everything be really interesting and really captivating. So is that a word? Captivating? I think so.
I think so.
That's awesome. So can you talk about kind of your writing process in writing this book? So like, you know, how long did it take you to write? Like beginning with the very first day you sat down to the day it got published, kind of what the process was like.
Well, I started it in 2019, and I'd kind of done like a short story about divination, and I was just thinking about how could I make this kind of ghosty, and so that was where it came with the sort of premise of Professor Grant and his original seance, and calling out the different ghosts. And then I just kind of developed it and went on and just thought, no, actually, I don't want it to be a short story. I think this, you know, could be a full book. And so it obviously took a couple of years, but the main thing was the editing. I mean, looking back over the properties of the book, I always say this when I'd finished and was ready to sort of send it off. I checked how many hours I'd been working on the document, and it was 2,700. And I was just like, 2,700 hours?
Oh,
That's a lot.
hours. I thought you meant minutes. I'm like, oh man, it seems like a
No,
lot of minutes.
I wish. Yeah, I just thought that's crazy when you actually it's that many, and that's how much time you put into it. And then, you know, there'll have been more added on as I sort of tweaked things as I was sending it out and getting nowhere at first, obviously. And then, you know, thankfully, Wicked House picked it up, and I was kind of getting to the stage where I was just like, oh, you know, nobody's bitten on this. Maybe it isn't, you know, good. Like, you know, I hope it is, and maybe it isn't going to get anywhere. And then Wicked House just came back to me last year and said, yeah, you know, we've got an offer there if you'd like to take it. And December. off.
That is fantastic, and it's doing so well.
Oh, thank you.
I heard about it on the Books of Horror group, and for I would say the past maybe like several weeks, people just continually post about it. They're like, "Hey, I just read this. This is amazing. Like, you should pick it up." And congratulations on all your success on this. Like, your first book, that's so impressive to me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
The Books of Horror guys are amazing. Like, I can't believe the support and how just friendly and knowledgeable everyone is, and it's just great. And as a first timer, you have that imposter syndrome, and you just feel like, oh my god, is it really rubbish? And but everyone in Books of Horror has just sort of been a really, really, really nice kind of driving force behind me, just getting a bit more confidence about kind of going out there and putting myself out there a bit more. So I really appreciate it. So thank you.
I love this group so much. Honestly, like the fact that everybody is so supportive, including, the other authors, like you, for example, were very supportive of, the first interview that I did. And the fact that like, you could be like, oh, well, my book is better, or like, I feel this, you know what I mean? Instead, everybody just kind of builds each other up. And
Yeah.
it's such a nice, heartwarming, community that like, you wouldn't think going into like a group called Books of Horror that you would have these kinds of personalities, but it's just, it's just very encouraging to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everyone's just fantastic.
Yeah.
And so it's been so helpful. Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, so so I'm kind of going to change topics a little bit. So when you are not writing, so kind of what are your hobbies? Like, what does your day-to-day look like? Things like that.
Yeah, so I edit part-time freelance
Oh,
for like an online publication. So if I'm having a disciplined day, because it can be hard, especially after lockdown, it was just like everyone just got used to that free-for-all kind of lifestyle, didn't they?
yeah.
So I have to be a bit more disciplined about my time. So kind of get up early, do a few hours of that, and then have a free afternoon. So I'll normally like take a walk to kind of break it up. I'm pretty lucky here in Lancaster in the UK. There's loads of really nice walks, and it's kind of like an oldie worldy kind of town. Like we've got a castle. I say town, it is a
Wow.
city, but it looks like a town. It's teeny. It's like a postage stamp to walk one end to the other. It's so small, but there's like lots of cobbled streets and things like that. So it is a nice place to walk around.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and then the afternoon, providing it's a good disciplined day, then I'll do a bit of writing and just try and get a few hours in here and there. But yeah, it's like I say, since lockdown, it's been really hard to just get that discipline with
Oh, yeah.
still working from home.
Yeah, I haven't learned the whole discipline skill. Like, I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna sit down from this time to this time, and I'm gonna do this, and then that time rolls around. I'm like, well, but I'm still doing something else, so I'm not
Mhm.
gonna do it. So, um, yeah, it's a challenge. So anytime anybody's like, oh yes, I sit down from here to here, and I get all this stuff done. Like, if that is the most impressive thing to me in
Yeah,
the world.
agreed.
Um, so on the subject of horror, so are you into horror like movies? Like is horror just in general something that you're really passionate about? Because I'm always looking for something that's genuinely scary to watch. Like, is that something that you like to?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I love horror movies. So I'm a real fan of found footage horror actually.
Oh yeah.
So if there's a good found footage horror movie, I really like those. I think my favourite is Hell House LLC. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't. No.
Um,
I'm gonna
it's
actually
like
write.
a
Actually, I watch this over.
so it's like those haunted house events where people walk through and people jump out at them and stuff.
Mhm.
It's one of those, and it's sort of like the guys who are setting it up just filming everything that's going on beforehand. But then the place that it's set at is full of well, I won't spoil it, but just not very nice things. So that's a really great one. Butterfly Kisses is also a really, really good found footage horror.
Oh,
Other than that, Hellraiser is always a oldie but
yeah.
goodie.
Classic. Yeah.
I think that kind of inspired because like the Cenobites have such an interesting backstory.
Mhm.
And so when I started kind of reading into that, I was just like, oh, this is so great to have these kind of like horrible, horrible, nasty things, but also that kind of humanization of them. And I think that has really inspired what I'm hopefully going to do with the Suffering, because I know there's not much nice about the ghost at the moment, but
Well, I always love reading something. My cat came to visit us. Don't mind her. Um, this is something like really nice. So I love a story that is kind of central around the characters themselves. Because for me, I like the scary things. I like really trying to feel as scared as I possibly can. But I also like feeling connected. You know what I mean? Like I felt that way when I was reading The Suffering, because you did go into, a lot of the characters, and it was, character driven in a way. So I feel like you are more invested in a story if you really feel for the ones who are in it. You know what I mean?
oh, I'm glad you felt that way about it.
Um, all right, let's see. So what are you reading right now? So like what kind of books did you read? Anything other than horror, or is that really your only kind of genre?
Well, at the moment, I'm just working through the bracket, so it is
Oh
just
yeah.
horror all the way. So I'm about to start Anathema by Nick Roberts.
Nice.
So I'm really excited
Mhm.
about that one as well, because I've read The Exorcist House, obviously, but then I just loved it so much that I was like, oh, I'll have to check that one out.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, but mostly the bracket at the moment. Yeah, I think I'm on horror overload, which is never a bad thing.
No, definitely not. So do you have any early favorites at this point, or you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but just curious what you're kind of leaning towards.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I've read so far, I've just loved so many of them. The Root Witch, I really enjoyed. That was great.
Yes, that's on my list. I can't wait to read that.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's great. Hate to say it because he's my opponent, but John and the Cursed Among Us, absolutely brilliant.
Yep,
It's one
I
of those
read that.
books where, yeah, you just want to kind of go back in time and get out with your friends again and
Yes.
go exploring and things. And I think if writers can do that and make you feel like that lovely nostalgia that I think only a good horror book can do, then
Yeah.
it's only a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was getting like real, like genuine, like R.L. Stein vibes from it, from, back when I was young and reading these horror books. Like I just, yeah, it definitely had really good vibes to it.
Definitely. And Stolen Tongues as well. I just finished recently and loved that. I've been meaning to read it for ages, so I was so happy to have an excuse with the group to read it, and yeah, loved it.
Yeah, I got a tattoo recently, which I wasn't thinking Stolen Tongues at all, but like some feedback that I got was like, hey, that reminds me of that book Stolen Tongues. Because I guess it's upside down, like you can't really see it, but like here's the book, here's the spirit, and like here are the mountains. So like,
That's
wow, that reminds me of Stolen Tongues. I'm like, yeah, that
I
was the
see
plan all
it.
along.
So is there some favoritism? We know where your vote's going.
I'll get another tattoo on this side for The Suffering. I'll put all the spirits on here.
A big toe or something.
Actually, that's a good idea. Like putting like every time you really enjoy a book, like getting a tattoo of that book. So that's
Oh yeah.
not a bad idea. All right, let's see. Sorry, I have my questions over here instead of looking
No, it's all
down.
right.
So I actually love this question. We only have, I would say, about 5 more minutes. But so tell us something that we would be really surprised to know about you. I love this question because, it's like a lot of the questions are very typical, like, oh, your process and things like that. But
Mhm.
I want the dirt.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. The only thing I could think of to respond with this question is like my I can lick my own elbow, and I know that sounds really
Can you
stupid
really?
and not very gritty at all, but you're not supposed to be able to, and so it's one of those weird facts. Like if ever you sort of look on the internet as to what humans aren't supposed to be able to do, like licking your own elbow is supposed to be one of them that you're not ever supposed to be able to do. So perhaps I'm an alien. Maybe this is why I'm scared of
Oh
them so much.
my God. Well, if you are an alien, then you're a nice one. Who says that they have to be mean aliens, You could just be genuinely good, you know, aliens. Just spread positivity. You don't have to be human to do that.
That's true. Very true.
Uh, um, Okay, so do you have any advice for people who really want to write, and maybe talk a little bit about the indie publishing process a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, my main advice for people is we always feel like there's a time limit. And I think all my life I've just had this like, oh, if you don't do it by then you're a failure. If you don't do it by then you're a failure.
Yeah.
If you don't do it by then you're a failure. And you don't need to do that. You don't have to put that restriction on yourself, because every year that I've been doing this, I've learned something new, and things have improved, or I've got a different perspective on something that maybe was a bit of a weakness before. And so every year and every month, every week that you are writing, you're getting better and better. So there doesn't have to be this whole like, oh my god, if I haven't done it by this point, then that's it, terrible, embarrassed, whatever. Don't ever think like that, because it does happen so long as you just keep on going. Like I turned 40 in January, and it had always
Oh
been
my
like,
God, me
oh
too. January
yeah.
11th. What was your birthday?
17.
11. I'm I'm 6 days older than you.
Well,
Sorry, I'm so sorry to
birthday
interrupt
buddy.
you. That's
That's
really
all.
funny. Sorry, please. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. So yeah, and I always thought like, I really want to be published by the time I'm 20, and then obviously that
Yeah.
passed. And then again 30, and then I was like, okay, I'll take 35, I'll take 35. And then I was just like, oh no, it hasn't happened, it's never gonna happen. And then 40, it was sort of, obviously it came out on like the 24th of February, so it's like a month after sort of turning 40. And you don't have to put that limit on, because it's better than it could have ever been 10 years ago. So who cares? And as it's even better being 40 than it is being 30. So
It really is. Like I am in a much better place than I have ever been. And 40 really isn't as old as, you think it is when you're 20. But like it's
no,
it's
I
really
know.
it's really like encouraging to hear that, because, like you said, it's so easy to get into the mindset like, okay, well, if I'm not successful by 25, like I might as well just give up.
Yeah,
But people can be successful at any age. Like there's really nothing that kind of dictates what success is, or like what age you have to be. So that
exactly that.
actually is really encouraging to me. So,
No.
and so one final question before we go. So can you tell us about any projects that you're working on now? Anything top secret that, I won't share with anybody, but yes, I will.
Nothing top secret. I'm going to do something a little bit different in between working on the next suffering, but I am planning on doing a suffering too.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
and just go a little bit more into the ghosts and things like that, and
Yeah,
their backstories, and bring them out a little bit more.
nice.
And then I've got a book that I'm working on at the moment, that's sort of like about the things that you see when you close your eyes to sleep. Like how sometimes you can see like colours and
Mhm, yeah.
shapes and things. So it's basically, I wanted to do something that people would think about when they go to try and sleep and close their eyes, and just start getting in the head a little bit. So
Yeah.
hopefully that will be as creepy as I want it to be. And so that should hopefully be the next one.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. I'm very excited to hear that there's going to be another suffering, because, it was definitely left open-ended, which I love when books do that. That's not like, oh, cut and dry, like here you go, tie it up in a little bow. So
Yeah.
I would love to see, especially the background. I loved that about the first one, that there's a story behind every single one of the spirits, and I think that is really fascinating. So I look forward to that.
Thank you
And so
so
it looks,
much.
yeah, of course. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. You are a lovely human being.
Oh, I feel like I was just talking too much.
Oh no, not at all. Like that's the whole point. That's the whole reason we're here is to, to get to know
Oh.
you, and get an idea of your personality and everything. So I think this has been a lot of fun for me, and I'm sure everybody is going to agree when they watch this. They're going to be like, well, this is fantastic, and hopefully those who haven't will go out and read The Suffering, because it's such a great book.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. I really
Yeah,
appreciate that.
you are welcome. Um, Okay, well, looks like our time is up, and I will see you on, I don't know, I'm gonna say, I was gonna say I'll see you on the flippity flip, but I'm not cool enough to pull that off, so I'm just gonna say goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Of course. All right. Bye.
Bye.